بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Welcome to our series, The Empty Space. Today is the fourth episode, I believe. The strategies is what I'm going to be talking about today, inshallah. And I want to start out by pointing out something that's really interesting in the Quran. When you go to Surah Al-Nazi'at, you'll find Musa alayhi salam's story in Surah Al-Nazi'at very briefly. It's a short surah, so the story of Musa alayhi salam is not told in length or in detail. But what's interesting about it is what Musa alayhi salam did when he approached Fir'aun for the first time. Musa alayhi salam, when he came to Fir'aun, what he said was, now mind you, Fir'aun is a person who has enslaved a full race of people. He has claimed lordship over human beings. He has called himself names that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls himself. So this person is truly a transgressor, truly an oppressor. And if Musa alayhi salam came to him and said, and these are the words that Surah Al-Nazi'at use of Musa's approach, فَقُلْ هَلْ لَكَ إِلَىٰ أَن تَزَكَّى. How about I point out for you a way to purify yourself, to perform tazkiyah. And it's interesting because it's as if the Quran, or it's not as if, the Quran is telling us that even Fir'aun, on the scale that he was oppressive, on the scale that he was harming people, transgressing against people, the reason behind it was just an issue of the nafs. I mean, Fir'aun is a politician. He's one of the world leaders at the time. And he was making huge decisions, enslaving people and claiming, making certain claims, and he's making true political, administrative, governmental decisions. And the Quran is pointing out to us, but all the mistakes he's making, they stem from one place. It's not as complicated as you think it is. Sometimes we look at the world and we think that in order for decisions to be made and changes to happen, it's really complicated. It's really not. هل لك إلى أن تزكى وأهديك إلى ربك, and I'll point you, and I'll guide you towards your Lord. فتخشى, and then you'll have reverence in your heart. And once you do that, things will work out. And of course, Fir'aun said no, and he was punished. But the concept there in the Quran to me is extremely interesting. That it just points out to you, it's really, that's all it is. Don't get fooled. Don't be fooled. Don't overcomplicate things. It all comes down to the simple instincts that we talked about yesterday, and convictions and desires that the nafs has, and it guides literally everything from the smallest decisions to the largest decisions in the world. That's why if we learn to deal with them properly, if the path that we started to walk down together, inshallah, in this series is something that you continue in your life, then you will change as a person. You'll find the barakah of that in your heart. What is the definition of tazkiyah? If you were to define tazkiyah very clearly, I know I did the definition episode a while back, but I left out tazkiyah because I think now is a good time for me to explain to you what it is. هي التبصر بعيوب الذات والانتقال بالروح من مرحلة إلى أخرى ارتقاء بها. التبصر بعيوب الذات means for us to be able to have insight upon our flaws, for us to have insight regarding our mistakes, our shortcomings, our deficits. It's personal insight. That's what it is. الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة. Indeed, the human being has insight upon his own self, if he chooses to. You can easily choose not to. But tazkiyah, it starts by being able to identify our personal internal flaws, the mistakes and deficits. And then taking the spirit and taking the nafs, taking the soul, and then elevating it from one stage to the other. Yesterday I talked about the stages. We talked about being, submitting to the nafs and then forcing it, and then the nafs, kind of silenced, being accepting, and then it actually finding joy, kind of moving it from one stage to the other, slowly until it reaches the stage of love, where it changes its convictions. So we have a change of convictions. That's what tazkiyah actually is. And I think you already figured that out probably by yourself. So what are the three domains we're going to be working on in order to start achieving that? Well, There are two straightforward domains, and there's a third one that's a bit more complicated that I'll be spending the next 2 episodes talking about in detail. And to be honest, 2 episodes or 3 or 4 aren't enough to tackle it. We're going to have a full series about it if there's interest in this. But the first 2 domains, which are relatively straightforward and pretty simple, if we start working on them. The first one is regarding the cycle that I talked about a few episodes ago. Feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. That cycle where each one of these elements is affecting the other one positively or negatively, but depending on, and it's a closed cycle. It's virtuous or vicious depending on which direction it's going. This cycle needs external elements to affect it. And you can work on that. You don't need steps. You don't need durus. You don't need lessons to tell you. You just have to make a few decisions. A few very clear, blunt, straightforward decisions that you're capable of doing. To affect your feelings, you just need good experiences. You need to have good experiences regarding things that you want to do. If you don't have good experiences, you don't have good memories, you don't have good feelings. That's why Taraweeh exists. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed the deen so that you would have good experiences. We come to the masjid at night. Going anywhere at night is fun, period. As long as it's not a war zone, going anywhere at night is fun. Coming to the masjid at night where most people are sleeping and praying and people talking and being together and be outside of that, it's a beautiful experience. People, I know because for myself, it leaves a beautiful memory. And when you have a beautiful memory regarding prayer, then your feelings towards prayer become positive. So just find fun experiences regarding things you want to do that you're finding difficulty in doing. Sometimes you have to seek that out. You have to actually go. And I think one of our major jobs and functions as Muslim institutions is to provide those experiences. That's what we do. We run a Quran halaqah for years in the masjid. Whenever we had our meetings, the teachers were always uptight about the fact that their kids aren't memorizing as much. And I'm like, it's okay. What they're getting from coming to the masjid and spending time with friends and is a good experience. That good experience will leave a good memory. That good memory will lead to good feelings. And every time they think of Quran in the masjid, a good feeling will come to them. And that will start that cycle. Start sending that cycle in the virtuous direction and moving. And they'll come back. When they're older, they'll come back to the masjid because they have good memories there. Provide good experiences for yourself. Sometimes if you're older and there's no one providing experiences for you, go provide a good experience for yourself. Perform a umrah, or have an Islamic camp where you spend time with people outside doing something where but you're doing something that will leave you a good memory and a good feeling regarding something that you want to do but you're finding difficulty doing. Seek knowledge. That's how you affect your thoughts in this cycle. Learning is the most important part of this whole process. Learn. We have to seek knowledge. You have to take it upon ourselves to actually learn. And that, again, you don't need steps for that. You just need to decide, I'm going to learn. I'm going to go find a source that I can trust, and I'm going to spend time learning more about the deen, about these actions. The more you learn about them, the easier it's going to be for you to practice them. It's very simple. There's really no complexity to this. Again, these are straightforward issues. They're not complicated. But they do sometimes, go unmentioned or unnoticed. The reason why is because the nafs wants you to be distracted from all this stuff. The nafs doesn't want you to think about these things and look at them, because if you do, you're going to make good decisions. Those good decisions are going to harm her. The nafs is not going to be happy. It's not going to find what it's looking for. It's not going to be able to continue to serve its 2 major goals that are extremely short-sighted and extremely limited. Find good companionship. That's how you affect behaviors. In order for you to affect your behaviors positively, you need good people around you. You have to change your friends, maybe. Why do you think friendship and companionship is such a big deal in the Quran and in the Prophet ﷺ's hadith? الْمَرْءُ عَلَى دِينِ خَلِيلِهِ فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَحَدُكُمْ مَنْ يُخَالِلُ. The human being at the end will be just like their friends. Ala deen means, deen is faith, but deen is also, like what it actually is the way of life, meaning way of behavior. You will end up behaving and acting like your friends, so be very careful. That's what he's saying, alayhi salam. Be very careful who your friends are. Be very picky about your friends. It's okay. Because the most valuable thing you have is your time. And they're going to influence your behavior. And it's going to influence that cycle. And it's going to influence who you are. That is something worth being picky about. I mean, you don't have to be picky. Don't be too picky about what food you eat and what clothing you wear, but be really, really picky on who you're spending time with. That's your capital, is your time. Don't spend it with anybody. If the person that you're spending time with is not influencing you in a positive way, is not offering you a positive vibe in your life, if they're not behaving in a way that you could, because you're going to emulate your friends and they're going to emulate you. That's how life is. We rub off one another. We spend time with each other. I learn something from you, you learn something from me. I become more like you, you become more like me. So if the person you're spending time with is not a positive one, then you need to change that. This is so important, especially for my younger brothers and sisters. You need to make these decisions. I know they're hard. I know it's hard to reject someone, or it's hard to distance yourself from a friend because you end up attaching yourself to them emotionally. But if they're not helping you in your life, if they're not moving you forward, if they're not drawing you closer to God, if they're not practicing and behaving in ways that are right, that are ethically sound, if they don't have the right values you need for your own, you have to preserve yourself. Again, you have to be selfish sometimes. Because the long-term goal is Jannah. You have to be selfish about that. If this person is not helping you get to Jannah, then what are you doing with them? What are you doing with them? And you don't have to get rid of your friends in an abrupt manner. You don't have to say you're no longer... You just pull yourself out of their lives slowly. Just a slow distancing. You spend maybe every day with them, every second day. And then after that, just slowly remove yourself. Just be less available. That's all it is. To change friends, you just have to be less available to your friends. Hey, can we go out? I can't go out today. Can we hang out today? I can't. It's not, I don't want to spend time with you. That's too rude. Don't do that. No one likes doing that. You don't want to burn bridges between you and other people. But if someone's influencing you negatively and your behaviors are getting worse, then you need to slowly withdraw yourself from their lives and replace them with someone else. And your circles in life are really important. Like we all have these little circles where we have people very close to us, then a bigger circle, people are close but not too close, then a bigger circle are acquaintances, and then bigger circle just regular people. These circles, we have to move people in and out of them. That's our choices. We have to make these choices and decisions because we want to affect that cycle. That cycle has to be moving in the positive direction all the time. You have someone who's affecting behaviors in a negative way. Sometimes a bad friend can affect behaviors in a negative way, thoughts in a negative way, and feelings in a negative way. That's why they're so dangerous, because one bad companion can take that cycle and trash it. They completely ruin it because they can affect everything negatively. And parents see that in their kids. When they spend time with certain people, they come back, they're upset, they're acting out, their behaviors change. It's because the effect of that person is hard to get them to leave them, but hopefully if they understand why, they'll realize you're not a better person when you're around them. You're not a better person. You don't want to be that. You don't want to do that. So that's kind of the straightforward, the first element, the first domain we work on. That cycle. Feelings, thoughts, behaviors. It's pretty straightforward. Find good experiences. Seek knowledge to help your thoughts. And make sure you have good companions so that your behaviors stay in the right direction. You don't need a lot of lessons for this to happen. You just need to make a few good decisions. And sometimes you'll need help with that. The second domain that we're going to work on is elevating the spirit. If you remember, I explained to you the conscience in one of the episodes when we talked about definitions. The conscience, or al-damir, or an-nafs al-lawama, as the Quran calls it. That blaming aspect of the soul, where it feels bad for doing something wrong or for not doing the right thing. That voice in your head, the conscience, that voice becomes louder and louder the more the spirit is elevated. The higher the spirit is elevated, the stronger that voice. How do you elevate your spirit? You fill it with khair. You just fill it with goodness. How do we fill it? How do we fill the spirit with khair? The spirit has a lot of khair in it by default because it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you can contribute to it and you can strengthen it. You can strengthen that spirit, the goodness in the spirit, by a few things. You just need to fill it with love. You have to love people for the sake of Allah. You have to surround yourself with people whom you love for the sake of Allah and who love you back. Love is important. A life that doesn't have love in it is a life not worth living, just to be very clear. When there's no love, when there's no emotion, when there's no passion, when there's no affection, life becomes almost unbearable. So you need to surround yourselves with people who truly love you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And who are these people? Your parents, your siblings, if you're married, your spouse, your children. your close friends that are helping you towards the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't fool yourself and say, why this friend is not a good person, doesn't influence me at all, but they love me. If they did, they wouldn't do that. A person who truly loves you does not influence you in a negative way, does not take you farther away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't get mixed up on these issues. Someone who truly loves you will help you become a better person. Will help your behaviors be better, draw you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help you become the best person you can become. And if they're not doing that, then that's not true love. Surround yourself with people who support you. We require support in our lives. No one can actually go through life successfully without being supported properly, without having those around them who can support them. That's why you need to be very careful. Are there people around you who bring you down, who mock you when you try and be a better person, who you try to build something up and they try to break it all down? Look for people who support you. These things elevate the spirit. Having loving relationships and having people who support you, these things allow the spirit to elevate. Go to masajid. Again, another design that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inserted into our deen. Coming to masajid, just coming to a masjid elevates the spirit. Just sitting in a masjid for a little bit, the tranquility and serenity that you find in a masjid allows the spirit to elevate. And that's something that we don't have today, but that's why we need to get it back as soon as possible. Inshallah, when this is all over, and finally the masjid can open the doors, you need to come to the masjid. Your spirit needs it. Your spirit is thirsty. It's hungry. It needs to come and find the khair, and that's why you're in a masjid. So don't make sure that you at least once, twice a week you come to a masjid. I know life can be busy, it can be difficult, but you can commit to that and come and find that, find that khair that your spirit needs to elevate. Find a teacher, find a sheikh, find a mentor. You can't walk the walk unless you have someone who is there to mentor you through it, to watch over you, to help you out, to give you advice, to help regulate your steps. Finding a good sheikh or a mentor or a teacher is something that's very important. It's harder to do, I guess, in this part of the world, but it's still you still have a lot of resources around you in our community. So you can find people who can help you do that. Read the Quran. Reading the Quran elevates the spirit. Just the mere act of just opening it and reciting it, whether you know how to read well or not, will elevate your spirit. All these little decisions, actions will help elevate the spirit. Those two domains that I talked about are pretty straightforward. Just a few decisions that you make that will help you massively along the way. See, small decisions that you make they're maybe not that small, but they're pretty clear cut. There's really not much of a build-up to them. If you make these decisions, if you make sure you have good friends around you, look for support, you seek some knowledge, you have good relationships, you have good experiences, just doing those on their own will help you later on become control your nafs without even knowing that you are. That's why you don't have to be religious to be able to control your nafs. You just have to make the right decisions, take the right steps. So those are the two first domains. The third domain is dealing or managing the diseases of the nafs, which is what I'm going to be talking about next halaqah, the next episode, the episode after that, to whatever time that extent we have, inshallah, going forward. And the reason that we need to do that, the reason that we have to talk about the diseases of the nafs and we have to deal with them, is because the deficits that we have on the inside may not be apparent right now in our lives, even though they are there. What do I mean by that? There may be a lot of envy inside of us, a lot of hasad, it's there. But because we're living a life where we have everything we need and we're not surrounded by people who we feel are outdoing us or outperforming us, we don't know that we have hasad. This means that all it takes for that hasad that we have inside to be exposed is a change of circumstances. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His mercy towards us and compassion, will often not give us extremely difficult circumstances all the time and right from the beginning. He'll allow us time to work on all these diseases on the inside, to change them. But mark my words, if you don't, life will expose every deficit that exists on the inside. I guarantee it. Whatever you leave dormant inside, whatever disease that you don't deal with, whatever it is, whatever shahwa or laziness or oblivion or vanity that exists inside, that circumstances have not exposed, and you didn't take the time to actually address, to look at yourself and find where that lies, where that problem lies, and deal with it, life will later expose. And that is how life works. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows you enough mercy that you never get exposed, well, that is an amount of rahmah that you should spend the rest of your life being extremely grateful for, because it's very rare. The Quran says, he says that you will be. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people honestly think that they're going to be let to say, we believe in Allah, and they're not going to be put to the test? We're going to be put to the test. The test is mostly going to be psychological. It's going to be nafsi. The physical part and the financial, these are all things that they're much easier to deal with than the psychological and nafsi part of dealing with any difficulty. So that's why this is so important. There are many people who are cheap. Many of us are cheap, but we're just not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has concealed that cheapness for us so that we're not exposed. But any circumstances can come by. It's easy to give when you have a lot, way more than you need. Can you still give when you don't? Alhamdulillah, the circumstances right now, you have way more than you need, so you're giving. But you don't know, maybe there's a lot of bukhl inside. Maybe you need to work with that and deal with that. And so on and so forth. And we'll talk about these, inshallah, in more detail as we move forward. But that's the warning that I'm issuing. Just because it's not apparent doesn't mean it's not there. And if you don't deal with it while you have the luxury of time to deal with it, because the circumstances are of ease, you can do it, then I fear for you that the circumstances change and then it's exposed. And I've seen that. Extreme circumstances expose that. War, for example, will expose behaviors and thoughts and virtues of human beings that you never thought were possible. You'll see things you're like, I would never think that person would ever behave like that, but that's what circumstances do. And the lack of tazkiyah, that's what it leaves. It's very painful to see and to know that, to learn about yourself, something like that. I'm not talking about others, well, I'm just talking about myself. I'm going to share with you a number of rules. That I think we need to keep in our minds as we go through all these different diseases and where they come from and how to deal with them. These are just a set of rules that apply for every circumstance, for every situation. That's why I'm going to talk about them on their own. These are the rules of change. If you want to make change, you have to follow a few rules first. If you don't follow them, the change won't work. First rule, rifq, tenderness, kindness. This is qualitative, meaning when we're going to do changes, when we make a change in our lives, the quality of it has to be, the nature of it has to be tender. It can't be extreme. Extreme changes that are from a quality perspective, don't really work. If you want to change your diet, so you end up living in a place where there is no food and you're always starving and you've cut out everything that you like of your diet, that is too extreme. The quality and the nature of that change is too big. You may end up losing the weight, but that type that won't work. That will make the nafs very hateful. The nafs will be on vengeance because the way you treated it was so. The nafs is very flexible, but it can be broken. It's extremely flexible. You'll be surprised the circumstances that you can live with. You'll be surprised what you can live with in life. In your mind, like, I wouldn't survive if that happened, or I wouldn't survive if that was taken away from me, or I wouldn't survive. You'll be surprised what you can survive with. We're actually very, very flexible as human beings. It's just the nature of who we are. That's how we survived as a race. That's how we evolved. That's how we became who we are. But the thing is that the nafs is also breakable. There is a point where if the change is too extreme, you can break it, snaps. And it's almost incurable at that point. It's almost unfixable. It's extremely difficult to fix it after that. Extreme changes don't work. They don't serve the purpose. They don't purify the nafs. We want to do tazkiyah. We want to purify it. We want to improve it. We want to change. We don't want to break it. So the first rule is that we have to do this tenderly, kindly. We have to make sure that we do it properly. And that's the Prophet ﷺ would say, مَا كَانَ الرِّفْقُ فِي شَيْءٍ إِلَّا زَانَهُ. Put tenderness in anything, and it'll beautify it. It'll be done better. Whatever. وَمَا نُزِعَ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا شَانَهُ. Take tenderness out of anything, and it'll make it ugly. And it won't work as well, and it won't be as beneficial. Second rule, الصدق, transparency. Transparency and truthfulness. This is where most people will fail along this path. This is where you will fail. If you fail, this is where it is. The lack of being, the lack of ability to be transparent with one's self. It's one thing to, we all wear masks, not the literal mask we're walking around, the figurative mask. We need people to see us in a certain light. So we put on a mask and we walk around. You want people to know you as a certain way, that you're tough, that you're serious, that you're this, that you're that, whatever it is that you want people to see. But the truth of who we are is something only we know. When we take off that mask and we look at ourselves transparently and truthfully and honestly. If you don't have the ability to be honest with yourself, then you should turn this off right now. Because anything you do in trying to purify yourself will be a complete waste of time. Because you'll just be lying to yourself, and you'll be doing things that don't really count, and it won't go anywhere. Sometimes people are so good at lying to themselves that only a polygraph will expose what they really feel and how they really think. And some people will be surprised that, no, that's what I think is true, but no, your body doesn't. Deep down inside, there's a part of you that knows that what you're saying about yourself and what do you know who you are? Do you actually know why you do what you do? Are you honest about yourself, or have you lied to everyone about who you are to the point that you believe it? Some people will come Yawm al-Qiyamah and they will lie to God. يوم يبعثهم الله جميعا فيحلفون له كما يحلفون لكم ويحسبون أنهم على شيء ألا إنهم هم الكاذبون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will resurrect them all and bring them, and they will swear to him, I swear to you, Ya Rabb, I was like this. I swear to you, I was a good person. I swear to you, I never harmed anyone. I swear to you, I never wanted to harm that person. I swear to you, just like they swore to you in dunya, I swear to you, I didn't do it to harm them. But they've said it so many times that now even they believe it. وَيَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ, they believe it. But indeed they are the liars, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will have to explain and show them how, no, you did want to harm them. But you didn't want to believe it, so you lied to yourself and you covered it, and we're good at that. It's a way that the nafs, it's a psychological reflex that we have. We don't want to deal with the fact that we did something wrong, so we cover it up and we lie about it. No, we didn't do anything wrong. Because we don't want to face that very brutal reality that we did something evil, that we were wrong, that we were mistaken, that we harmed someone, that we were oppressive. We don't want to deal with that. Sidq is going to be the most important part of the most important rule. You have to be honest with yourself. Why are you actually doing what you're doing? Do you truly understand your motives? Are you truly doing this for the right reason? Do you truly feel the way you feel? If everyone did this, by the way, the world would be a much better place to live in. But we don't do it very often because it hurts. Because it hurts to stare yourself in the face and be honest about what you see. And some people will walk the path of tazkiyah, by the way, lying to themselves the whole way. They'll benefit nothing. They're actually one of the reasons that the tasawwuf has a bad reputation, is because there's so many people in it who have failed to do this simple rule, which is being honest with yourself. So I hope that makes some sense. The third rule is going to be a graduality. Tadarruj. This is quantitative, not qualitative. This is quantity. We're going to make baby steps. The Prophet ﷺ says, "Inna hada ad-din mateen fa'awghilu fihi birifq." This is a very thick religion. Making change has to be slow. We don't want to make huge steps. You're not going to change yourself in Ramadan to the point where it's going to be small, very gradual changes, baby steps. That's all you need, because you have time on your side. That's the beauty of it. You have time. You have time on your side. You make these very gradual changes, and it's like growing. If you're living with your child, you don't see them grow. But someone who hasn't seen them for a year will come back and say, "Look how tall they've become. Look how old they've mature." And you look at them like they're the same they were. But then you look at an old picture and like, "Oh yeah, why couldn't you observe the change? Because it was so gradual, so slow." We have to do the same thing for our nafs. We have to change it slowly, gradually, taking baby steps, just minor improvements, minor progression, just small steps. Within a year or 2 years, you're going to see, "Oh my gosh, I used to be there. Now look where I am." But you try to make that same amount of change in short amount of time, it won't work. It rebounds. It backfires really badly. I've seen this so many times. This is a really important rule. I've seen so many people say, "I want to change my life." So they come to every single prayer and they read Quran every day and they start. And I'm telling you, just slow down, Yahui. Just slow down. You're going to burn out. Your nafs is not used to all this. You have to, and they don't listen because they're so enthusiastic, and then 2-3 months later they're back to where they were. They're back to they were. Why, ya Sheikh? Why didn't you take it slowly? Why didn't you just do this slow, just gradually? And someone doesn't pray who suddenly is going to pray every single fard and all the sunnah and all the qiyam al-layl all at once. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Just realistically, it doesn't work. Unless you're, somehow the Prophet ﷺ made specific dua for you. If you're just a regular person like myself, then you need to make baby steps, just baby steps. Be happy with the small changes on a prolonged period of time. Put yourself a goal for a year. I want to be there. And then just slowly make that adjustment, make these adjustments, and you'll see it. It'll work. Make habits. Daymuma. Something, whatever you have has to be consistent. It has to always happen. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ taught us, أَحَبُّ الْأَعْمَالِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَدْوَمُهَا أَوْ مَا دَامَ وَإِنْ قَلَّ. The thing that Allah loves the most is whatever is consistent. Even if it's small, just consistent. Don't take days off. Don't say, okay, I'm going to take a week off. No. Whatever it is that you've committed yourself to, whatever changes you've committed to, as we said, they're going to be tender changes. They're going to be small, slow changes. They're going to be based on honesty with ourselves, that we know that we need to make these changes. Then you have to stick to these changes. No matter what your circumstances are, you do them. And I'll give you examples very soon. But you have to hold on to it. You cannot, there's no cheat days when it comes to these type of changes. Cheat days, no. Cheat days are only for people who are making changes that are too big for them to handle. And that's why they don't work. That's why these type of diets, they don't work. Maybe you lose some weight in a couple of months, but it doesn't make, you're going to go back and gain it all over again because you didn't actually build habits. You can't be consistent. That's why smaller changes, slower changes are better. Because they can be consistent. Because that is a golden rule, a daymuma. It has to be something you do all the time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated 5 prayers and siyam of Ramadan and zakah and hajj. You're obligating yourself to do something. That's why make it small. Make it small, make it simple. But obligate yourself. I will do this every day. Period. I could be, wallahi, you could be in jail. You could have exams. You could be extremely ill in the hospital. As long as your brain is functioning, you're going to do it. That means a lot to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that means a lot to the process of change. Point after that. Self-regulation. You should try to write them down. You'll find them helpful. Al-muhasaba, i'adat al-taqeem. We need to always, throughout our process of change, take a moment and look back. And we need to evaluate. You have to do some evaluation. Self-regulation or evaluation is probably a better word. We're going to evaluate. Where were we? Where are we now? Have we made progress? Am I on track? Have I regressed? Have I forgotten how to do this properly? You have to do this. Umar ibn Khattab tells us, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسِبُوا. Judge yourself. Hold yourself accountable. Hold yourself accountable before Allah does it for you. Evaluation is holding yourself accountable. I was supposed to do this every day, and look, I'm starting to slack. I was supposed to make these small changes every few months, and I haven't been doing these changes. I haven't been making any progress in this domain here. I have to change that. You have to hold yourself accountable. Without doing that, people who set out for long-term goals, without doing evaluation on the way, lose their goal, lose their direction, go astray, and find themselves in a completely different universe. They're not even remotely close to where they were trying to go at the beginning because they weren't doing evaluations along the way that allowed them to redirect. Because sometimes you're going down a path and then slowly it's just how the nafs starts pushing you away from it. Then you have to say no. You evaluate. Oh, I'm going in the wrong direction. Then you steer back to where you were going again. And that's important to have self-evaluation, to have evaluation and self-regulation. Complete abstinence. Once you get rid of a bad habit, it has to be complete abstinence from that bad habit. What I mean, you have a bad habit, you've been doing it for a long time. If you stop it cold turkey, as I said, there's no rifq, there's no tenderness, and that's not gradual. So quantitatively and qualitatively, that's too much. So you need to slowly get rid of these bad habits. You slowly get rid of them. You cut down in frequency. You get down in amounts. You cut down in intensity. You keep on until you come to the point where that bad habit is gone. Once it's gone, once you remove it, that's it. You never do it again. Ever. That is something they teach people who have addictions. A recovering alcoholic cannot ever drink, not even a sip of alcohol. should not be in places that serve alcohol, should not have friends who drink alcohol, should not discuss alcohol, should not look at it, should not smell it, should not think about it, should not even see it on TV on a commercial. They should completely remove that from their lives. And that is something that is important. The moment you're able to rid yourself of a bad habit, you need to rid yourself of it. That's why you have to do it slowly. That's why you have to do it properly. And then you never go back. You don't miss it. You don't, just one day, just on vacation, just people who smoke, once you start smoking, never pick up a cigarette again. And don't surround yourselves with people who smoke or remind you of it, because that will, you will rebound, you'll regress, you'll do it again. Another important part of complete abstinence is replacement of bad habits. If you don't replace the habit that you have had with another habit, you will go back and do that original habit. You had a habit, it's bad, you removed it. Now there is an empty space. Hence the name of the series. There's an empty space sitting there. There used to be a bad habit there, but there's nothing there anymore. Oh, shaitan loves that. The nafs loves that. Now it can just fill anything it wants. Probably the same bad habit, but if not, some other bad habit. Unless you have a good one ready that you're gradually replacing it with. You're taking time away from this bad habit and putting in time with this good habit. By the time you've removed the bad habit, a new one is sitting right there that you have now developed. It's impossible for people to get rid of bad habits if you don't have a good habit in place. This is specifically for parents who have children or teenagers who have bad habits. You want them to stop the bad habit, you have to help them develop a good one. That's why sports and volunteering and learning Islamic knowledge and having good experiences and extracurricular activities, these are all things that kids' lives should be filled with. Because if you don't fill their lives with good habits, they will fill them with bad habits. I mean, only if you haven't lived life would you not know that. So it's extremely important that complete abstinence from bad habits and replacement of good habits. The last point, so there's 7 rules, is intentions. It's unique to us as Muslims. You have to remember why you're doing what you're doing. Why are we trying to make these changes? Why are we? It's for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be satisfied with us. We want to show Him as much love as He's showed us. We want to be able to stand and pray properly, where we're focused, where we're not distracted, where we're not feeling that there's something better to do. We just want to be able to do that. Just the concept of drawing ourselves closer to Allah is the intentions. Remember the intentions. Reminding yourself of the intentions will make sure the nafs doesn't sneak its self-interest into your actions. Sometimes you'll be doing something and you know it's the right thing to do, and it should be hard, but it's way too easy. It's just way too easy. And you wonder, why is this so easy? Why is my nafs not fighting me on this at all? And the reason that your nafs is not fighting you at all, the reason that it's not putting up is because it's found a way to get its self-interest in it. It's happy. Oh, it'll give us a good reputation. Go ahead and do it. People will like you for doing it. In the long run, this will make you more powerful. It'll give you more. It'll give you more reach. You can. So the nafs will find ways to justify why it's going to allow you to do the khair by having self-interest. And to change that requires tasheeh niyyah. And we're going to talk about that, inshallah, as we move forward in the diseases. Because the nafs will always find a way to slip in its self-interest. And you'll be like, oh, I have no problem praying. I have no problem fasting. I have no problem. Well, then be careful. Because the nafs is very sneaky. It'll slip in its self-interest, and that will ruin the purity of the action that you're doing. And you're not actually changing. If the nafs is not changing, if it's not being purified, if its convictions are not improving, then whatever you're doing is not working. We have to be able, the nafs is going to be painful. That's why you have to do it slowly. That's why you have to do it tenderly. But it has to happen. The nafs has to change its ways. If the nafs is too sneaky and it just finds ways to justify, I'm okay with you doing that because there's self-interest in it, then we're not doing anything. We haven't actually achieved anything. And that is, after lack of honesty, is the second reason that this will fail. If you allow the nafs to find self-interest in every good thing that you do, and you don't actually manage your nafs and teach it and educate it and help it change its convictions. If it holds on to the same convictions, just by slipping in its interest in whatever your good deeds that you're doing, we're not going to get anywhere. And that is the common thing, the most common problem. People who are doing a lot of khair and never actually thought about their nafs, not even once, is because they find self-interest in everything that they do. And they're satisfied with the self-interest that they get. And that's something that needs to be addressed. As a Muslim, you have to address it if you really want to be a better person in the long term. So these are the 7 rules that I think are important. Number 1, rifq, tenderness. From a qualitative perspective, from a quality perspective, has to be tender. Honesty. You have to be honest with ourselves. You have to be truthful with ourselves. Graduality. It has to be gradual. Changes have to be slow. Daymuma. We have to be consistent with what we do. We have to make habits. Evaluation. You have to evaluate ourselves along the way so we don't lose track and lose focus of where we're going. Complete abstinence and replacing of bad habits. Once you get rid of a bad habit, you get rid of it, and you have to replace it with a good one, and then intentions. We have to make sure that we revise our intentions, because nafs will find a way to put its self-interest in there. We'll talk about that more, inshallah, as we move forward. I'll finish my talk today by talking about the tools. I thought, subhanAllah, I thought we were going to have more time. Maybe we can go into more detail tomorrow. We have 7 tools as well. Before I start talking about, okay, here's the first disease and the definition of it and where it comes from and how to deal with it, we have to also be aware of some tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put at our disposal to use, which makes this approach of self-purification unique to the Islamic to the Islamic way of thought, to the Islamic faith. Because others don't necessarily have these tools. And people who want to purify themselves aren't Muslims. They will make progress, obviously, and they'll actually achieve, but they lack certain tools that we have. The first tool, for example, dhikr, remembrance of Allah, invocation. Not everyone has this tool. They may use certain, and you'll find this in different therapies. They may use meditation and certain, but when we talk about the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being able to do that, that is the barakah and the nur that exists in approach. So I'll go through what the tools are, and you can think about them, and then tomorrow, inshallah, I'll start explaining them, and we'll enter the diseases. First one is going to be dhikr, by far the most important, and I'll explain why. It's extremely important, and for many reasons, not just Islamically, but even from a psychotherapy perspective. Dhikr, it has parallels within what they do in psychotherapy that is extremely powerful. But dhikr, because it's attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is even more strong for us. It is the anchor tool. It's the most important tool that we have in our kit, is dhikr. Number 2 is dua. Dua is a tool. I know we use it as, unfortunately, it's used as Aladdin's lamp. We're looking for a genie. We're looking for immediate gratification to get exactly what we want when we ask for it. Dua is a tool for self-purification, and I'll explain that, inshallah, tomorrow as well. Third, al-khidmah. Khidmah is service, meaning taking yourself outside of your comfort zone and going and serving people in ways that you didn't imagine yourself doing. And I'll tell you some stories tomorrow about how I witnessed that and how I did that in my life and took it too far and made a career out of it. but that's khidmah is extremely important. Al-hizb is not a political party or any party. Hizb is what we call the amount of Quran that you recite daily. The amount of Quran you recite daily is called a hizb. There has to be a small hizb. You have to have that. Just like you have dhikr, a wird, a certain amount of it, you have to have a hizb. And then qiyam al-layl is another tool, extremely powerful tool. The actual prayers that you pray on your own. You can say, well, that's just dua and dhikr put together, to a certain extent, but there is an aspect to it that makes it a bit more unique. Qiyam al-layl, anyone who's done it or continues to do it or hides in or fits in a few rak'at at the end of the night or early in the night, knows that the barakah of it is something you cannot give up once you get used to. Siyam, fasting. Believe it or not, fasting is one of the main tools that we have in our kit. Not Ramadan specifically, even though Ramadan is probably the most important, obviously. But Siyam itself is a tool that we use for self-purification. And the 7th and last one is knowledge, is reading. To read. As in Iqra. As in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam first. That first word, Iqra. And every meaning that it contains. Increasing your wisdom, increasing your experiences, increasing your knowledge, taking time to listen to what other people have to offer within any domain, reading, is a tool again, reading is not just reading a book. It's reading between the lines. It's learning to understand why things are happening around you. Being able to observe behaviors and observe incidents and understand them properly. Listening to people explain their life experiences and learning from them. That's what read means. And so these 7 tools. If you've got 7 rules, 7 tools. I'll talk about them inshallah tomorrow. That wasn't my plan. My plan was to actually get them in today, but I guess I misjudged how much time this was going to take. But we'll talk about them tomorrow inshallah. And they're very interesting, they're very helpful, and then we'll start talking about the diseases of the heart, and we'll try and tackle the main ones, at least until the series is over. And if there's interest in this series, inshallah, afterwards, I am happy to continue doing talking about stuff like this if there's enough interest in it, inshallah. Again, please offer feedback on the Facebook page under the video, you can add, or just send messages to anybody, to myself, Brother Khalid. You're welcome to send, and we'll put all the questions together if there are any questions, and we'll try and address them inshallah in a Q&A session, or even during the halaqat. I'll try and touch base on or touch upon the points that you brought up. I hope that was beneficial. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina wa habibina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khairan. بارك الله فيكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.